So we're making some excellent progress. We've seen how to add labels, buttons, and text fields to our apps. But of course we want our apps to actually do something. So now's the time that we're actually going to start doing some code. So let's go away from our simulator and close that down. And for now we'll get rid of this and we'll go back to our standard editor. And I'm going to bring back our file list on the left-hand side. So, as I mentioned earlier, these are the files that make up the project itself. I'm not going to worry about appdelegate.swift for the moment. The one we're going to look at is viewcontroller.swift. So every page of your app, every view controller has its own Swift file, which contains code for how that page should respond to the user. And that's what it looks like. I'm just going to very roughly go over this. We'll look at it in much more detail later on, so don't worry about it. Don't be scared by the code. The green code there is just comments, so you could delete that. It wouldn't make any difference. Anything with 2 slashes in front of it like that is a comment, so this is automatically put in by Xcode. This UIKit class is a set of functions that allow you to work with the UI or user interface. So every view controller is going to need the UIKit class imported, and there'll be various other things that we are going to import later on, but we don't need anything else for the moment. And then this again is a class, which is similar to a function. It contains a lot of code. We're not going to worry too much about what a class is quite yet. We'll go into that in plenty of depth later on. The main thing I want to focus on is this function here. So this is the viewDidLoad function, or method as they're known in object-oriented programming. And this essentially contains a load of code which will happen when that view is loaded. So in our case, when the app is loaded, because that's when the view is displayed. So I'm going to just get rid of that set of comments there. And then we're going to do our first bit of Swift programming. Very, very simple. We're going to type print ln, so print line. You'll notice that this little exclamation mark has popped up on the left. That's because at the moment we've got an error because we haven't finished typing our function there, but this will disappear as soon as we've finished. So print ln, and then brackets and double quotes. And once again, we'll use the classic hello world. And then you can see it's predicting the end of that command there. So that's your first bit of Swift that you've typed in there. So print ln hello world. And all that will do is it will essentially log the words hello world. It won't actually display them on the screen. It will display it in the log, which I've mentioned will be shown down here. So we've already got some details from our previous load there. So that's our first bit of Swift. You'll notice the exclamation mark has disappeared because we've now got a correct command. Programmers from other languages might be surprised to see a lack of semicolon at the end. In Swift you don't need semicolons. It doesn't mind them, but you don't need them. Just a new line for a new command is fine. So let's now save that. Command S and then Command R to run it. You actually don't need to save an app before you run it every time, but I get into the habit of it just because Xcode can be a little bit buggy and sometimes crashes when you run code, especially if there's some issues with that code. So I would get into the habit of doing Command S, Command R every time you run your app. And then, so we've got our app loading up there. And there it is, it's popped up, same as before, but you can see down there, very exciting, there is the output from our first bit of code. Hello world. Fantastic. So that's what this little bit of code did there. Now we're just going to do one more little bit of code, which will change the text of this pink label up here. And again, I will brush over quite a few things, but don't worry too much about it. We'll have plenty of time to look into it, into the details later on. I just want to show you how the basic things work. So we're going to bring back our Smart Editor or Assistant Editor over here, and that will allow us to see 2 things at once. So I want the main storyboard to appear on the right here, so I'm going to click here and then on Recent Files, and we used it in the last video, so I've got it just there, main storyboard. So that will display the template for our app that we saw before and allow us to mess around with labels and things like that. There it is. Now, I don't want this at the moment. I'm not interested in any of the options that that's giving me, so I'm going to click that little button there to get rid of it, and now I can just see this. Fantastic. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to control click on Hello World and then drag into my view controller class, and that will insert something called an outlet. And essentially an outlet is something that allows you to refer to that label in your code. So if you want to change the text of that label, then an outlet gives you something to refer to when you want to change the text. So all you need to do is choose a name for the label. So we'll just call it my label. Convention is to use small capitals for the first letter and then real capitals for every word after that. And then click connect, and you can see it's created what's called an IB outlet. Again, we don't need to worry too much about what that is. Essentially, what we've got is a variable, var, called myLabel, which I can use to refer to this particular label. So if I want to change the text of that label with my Swift code, all I need to do is say myLabel dot text. So this refers to the text of my label, and then I can change it to anything I like. So I'm going to go for it worked, because if I can see it, then it did. So myLabel.text equals it worked. The exclamation mark went away, which is a good sign. So when the app loads and the viewDidLoad method runs, or the viewDidLoad function runs, two things should happen. Firstly, we should see Hello World in the logs down here. And secondly, the text of my label, which is this label here, should be changed to it worked. So keep your fingers crossed. Hope for the best. Let's see if this works. Hurrah! You can see in our app, our text changed to it worked, which was our code doing something in the app itself. And of course, we've still got our log down the bottom of Hello World there. So it doesn't look like much. It's still more or less what we had before, but that's a really big step forward. We've used some Swift code to impact our app itself by changing the label using the myLabel.text command. So give yourself a pat on the back for using your first bit of Swift code. Get yourself a chocolate digestive as a reward. And in the next video, we're going to look at how to run some code when a button is pressed.